Hi everyone, and welcome to the Softball Canada Speaker Series presented by Rawlings Canada. Today's webinar is Behind the Plate with our guest speakers Ryan Boland and Kaleigh Rafter from our Canadian national teams. Although the softball season is currently suspended due to the coronavirus situation, we are happy to have the opportunity to engage with everyone listening at home, and we hope you will enjoy listening to our great speakers. Bonjour à tous et bienvenue à la série de webinaires de Softball Canada présentée par Rawlings Canada. Le webinaire d'aujourd'hui est Derrière le marbre avec nos invités Ryan Boland et Kaleigh Rafter de nos équipes nationales. Quoique la saison de softball est présentement suspendue en raison de la situation COVID-19, on est heureux d'avoir la chance de nous engager avec vous et on espère que vous aimerez écouter à nos excellents invités. La majorité de ce webinaire aura lieu en anglais, mais vous pouvez quand même poser vos questions en français. Veuillez s'il vous plaît poser vos questions dans la boîte des questions sur votre écran durant les présentations. On posera vos questions aux invités à travers du webinaire. The majority of this webinar will take place in English, but we will also be able to answer questions in French. Please make sure you type your questions in the questions box throughout the webinar. We'll be working your questions in throughout. Before we get started, we want to thank you all for joining us and for following the social distancing measures as directed by the Government of Canada and your local health authorities. Softball Canada is monitoring the situation closely and is posting regular updates on its website. Please continue to follow the government's COVID-19 prevention measures to help flatten the curve, and we will be back on the field as soon as it's safe to do so. Avant de commencer, on veut vous remercier d'être avec nous et de suivre les mesures de distanciation sociale telles qu'identifiées par le gouvernement du Canada et vos autorités locales de soins de la santé. Softball Canada surveille la situation de près et publie des mises à jour régulières sur son site web. Veuillez continuer à suivre les mesures de prévention du gouvernement du Canada pour aider à rétrécir la courbe et on sera de retour sur le terrain dès que ce sera possible d'y retourner en sécurité. This webinar series is presented by our proud partners at Rawlings Canada. Please take a moment to enjoy this short 1-minute ad before we get started. Hi everyone, my name is Gilles Leblanc. I'm the Manager of Marketing and Communications at Softball Canada, and I'll be your host for this webinar. Allow me to introduce our first special guest, Ryan Boland, who has been a member of our men's national team since 2011. Ryan has played in the last 4 WBSC Men's World Championships, winning bronze in 2017 and 2019, and gold in 2015. He also added a gold medal at the 2015 Pan American Games. Welcome to you, Ryan.
Hey Gilles, how's it going?
Pretty good. Can you talk a bit about your career as a whole before we get started?
Yeah, so I'm from St. John's, Newfoundland. I grew up playing minor ball with Ghouls, minor softball. Really started playing at about 3 or 4 years old, watching my dad play at the senior level and playing with my brother. My first nationals experience was midget nationals in 2004. Played at Canada Games in 2005, and then started my junior career in 2006. My first senior nationals was 2010. Always played with Team Newfoundland. After national experience is club ball, which I've started playing with the Jarvis Travelers, Toronto Gators, and currently Holman Twins. So outside of my national team experience, that's my softball career in a nutshell.
Great. Thank you so much for being with us today. So now I'll welcome Kaleigh Rafter, a 2008 Olympian who has been part of the women's national team since 2007. Kaleigh has competed in a total of 5 world championships with 3 bronze medals and 4 Pan American Games with a gold and 3 silver medals. She's currently training for the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games that'll be held in 2021. Thank you for joining us, Kaleigh.
Thank you guys for having me. This is awesome. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. Similar to Ryan, can you give us a quick rundown of your career? I know you've been kind of all over the place, so if you could take us through that.
Yeah, so I'm born and raised in Guelph, Ontario. So grew up playing ball in that area. Started playing boys hardball, flipped over to softball at around, I think it was in 6th or 7th grade. Played with Guelph Gators, the Brampton Blazers in the Southern or Ontario leagues. Had an opportunity to compete at quite a few Canadian championships. Ended up winning one in novice, I think one in Bantam and one in midget. So went down to play softball in the U.S., so got a scholarship to go play, and then got picked up to play with the Canadian team. Been playing with the Canadian team for this would have been my 14th summer. So, and then had the opportunity also to go over and play in Japan a little bit. So kind of been all over the place, but playing softball for quite a while.
Great, thanks. So thank you both of you for joining us. You know, our starting catchers on the national teams. We're going to have a nice little chat today about catching and different skills and things like that. So we do have a few slides that we can show to the public as well. So we'll start with you, Ryan. You're going to talk a bit more about skills of the catching position. What skills do you give the most attention to or work on the most?
I would say framing the pitch. Obviously, the first thing you have to do is catch the pitch, which is very important to be a catcher. And then the next step is make sure that strikes are strikes and marginal balls, you turn those into strikes. So really framing is a very important part of catching. Game calling, as you progress in your career, you're going to get more comfortable with your pitchers, with the umpires, learn how to talk to the umpires, and learn how to see what they want to see as the game progresses. And then watching hitters' tendencies. So really the main things, framing, pitch selection, your arm also very important, although people don't steal too often in the men's game, but it's still important to show that you do have an arm and it's not just a little noodle back to the pitcher or second base. And yeah, that's pretty much the skills of the catching position.
Good. Can you talk a bit about the receiving stance? What kind of stance do you want? Do you like to be wide? Do you like to be narrow? What's your feeling on that?
Yeah, so just get into a powerful stance. I like to get into a wider stance, stay low, keep my butt low to the ground. If there's a runner on, if there's a running threat, one foot is slightly ahead of the other. And really, when I'm starting my receiving stance, is I keep my glove 5 fingers up. So I got a glove here, so kind of 5 fingers up. That's what 5 fingers up means. If we get one away from the plate, away from our target, from the glove side, we want to roll the thumb. So that's rolling the thumb. We don't ever want to catch like this. And that's how you bust off your thumb with a hard thrower. So yeah, I mean, that's like to get low, talk to the umpire, see where his zone is, see what he wants to see, stay strong like you're in a squat, like you're squatting with weight on your back. That's pretty much it.
How about you, Kaleigh? Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think just kind of piggyback on what Ryan said at the end, I think whenever we're doing things as a catcher, I always talk to kids or athletes about picture you have a weight on your back. So if you're going down on your squat, so a lot of, especially females that I've seen, they like to call them toe strikers. So we love to stay on our toes when we're in the catching position. So the more we can put our heels to the ground and think about moving in all our movements, whether it's blocking, receiving, whatever it is, think about that perfect squat position. If you had weight on the back, how would you want to hold that weight? And it's trying to stack it on your big muscle groups. You're your glutes and your quads. The more we get on our toes, the more it's ankles and knees, and not a great idea for longevity. So, and then the other big thing is just posture. So making sure our back is in a good position when we move to handle and move efficiently.
Good. That's all good things that you talk about there. So now we'll move on to our next topic here. So we've got framing, which Ryan has already mentioned. Do you want to talk a bit more about framing? What strategies you use? What type of framing techniques that you use to get the most out of your pitching?
Yeah, so I just like to use subtle movements. I like to move late, just because we know in the men's side, and I'm sure the women's side as well, that the pitch tipping and pitch calling is something that can get you in trouble. So you can use that to your advantage as well. You can move early and switch back late, or if you're comfortable with catching something off your thumb, or if you're comfortable with the umpire, you can stay in your own position, dead center. Something that I like to pick up later in my career, when I got more comfortable with my pitcher, I would just start off on the inside part of the plate, because I know that's where the next pitch would be. So I'd throw the ball back, I'd stand up, chat with the umpire for a second, move my feet to the inside corner and get down there. That way no one's going to really see that subtle difference to that side of the plate. Now, if he don't want to go to that side of the plate, well, then I'm gonna be forced to move. But usually we got it down pretty good for location.
Is it hard for you kind of switching your techniques depending on the pitcher, if they're, some are harder throwers or some are softer throwers? Anything you need to adjust on that in terms of framing?
Not really. Obviously it's a lot easier to catch someone who has pinpoint control. Fortunately, in this part of my career, I do get to have that. So my thumb and my body is not broke up too much when it comes to wild pitches. I do have one pitcher on the national squad that his first pitch of every game is in the dirt, but we're working on that. But not really. Just try to give him a good target, let him know it's a two-way street. If he's not comfortable with that location or that pitch, then we'll adjust that way. So the way I go about my game is pitching and catching is a two-way street, and you guys got to be on the same page.
Could you give your thoughts on that, Kaleigh, on framing?
Yeah, I think definitely kind of what Ryan talked about. And then I think one of the big things that's helped me is just understanding, like, as a catcher where the ball's moving to. So if I have a drop ball that's coming up and going down, if I chase that ball and I go up with it and then try to catch down on it, I'm always chasing the movement. So similar, we talk about hitting, we don't want to be trying to swing down on a drop ball, we're trying to dig it out. The same mentality for catching is kind of beating it to where the movement's going and then working back to the ball. So your glove's always in a position to catch where that movement's going, and where that is. A lot of times you see that, like with the younger girls in rise balls, we chase the rise ball all the way up and it always ends up tipping off the top of our mitt. But if we can, on a rise ball, think of getting above it and catching back down on it, you're always beating the movement to where it's going. And I know, like Ryan, watching some of the guys that Ryan has to catch, like that's really, really important because their stuff's going everywhere. And if he were to chase any of those pitches, it's just going to be tipping off his mitt the whole time because he's never going to be getting to a spot where he can catch it.
Well, I catched a little bit, locally and all that. And, something that I learned early on is you tend to cheat a little bit on some pitches when you're calling a slider or something that goes sideways or up. So you try to cheat a little bit on that. Can you talk about that? How, I guess, before it leaves the hand, you kind of know in which location you're going and try to position your glove to bring it down or up or sideways?
Yeah, I think so. I know, like, especially pitchers, I find the hardest spot for me to catch is that, like, down and in spot. So for certain pitchers, like for some of our lefties who throw really hard down and into my left knee, and if they miss it and it stays low, that becomes, like, the hands down to me the most difficult. That pitch, like Ryan talked about, where it's really coming this way and you have to decide, do I flip my glove over or can I still maintain my hand posture here and catch that ball? So for sure on a lefty or maybe a righty that throws a hard, like down and in drop ball to that left knee, or if you're a lefty, your right-handed hitter or right-handed pitchers throwing in. So that's the spot I like to protect against. So a lot of times you'll see me with my glove targeted off outside of my left knee, just because I want to make sure I'm not getting beat to that spot. If I target in the middle of my body and I have to go back that way, I'm in jail right from the start. So I sometimes cheat, but I tend to do it on a lot of the pitchers, just target off my left knee so I know I'm working everything off there, and I'm never going to have that awkward one where I do have to slide my glove.
Ryan, can you maybe talk a bit more about the difference between receiving and framing? Is there a difference between the two?
Well, yeah, definitely. I think receiving, it's out of instinct, and framing, it's knowing where you need to position your glove and your body to get that pitch. So yeah, we talk about receiving and framing in the same sentence, but you know, receiving is just that, you know, we have to catch the ball, and framing is more of an art form really, and trying to widen that zone and widen the play as much as you can.
Good, thanks. So we'll move on to the next area of catching. So Kaleigh is going to talk to a bit more about throwing, so throwing the bases.
Yeah, so I know throwing comes up a ton with people, and I'm going to start this off kind of just sharing a quick little story of kind of when my throwing has diverted into this kind of idea. I will probably say this might be different from anything you've ever heard before, so I'll kind of go through where it came about. So I think it was 2014. I had an opportunity to work with, at the time, the catching instructor for the Chicago Cubs, who's now a bench coach for the Baltimore Orioles. And we just honestly got like 3 or 4 days to sit down and talk about, what do you do in baseball? What do I do in softball? Like, is there crossover? Is there carryover to what those two are? And actually that spring was when I headed over to Japan, and I had to play in Japan for the 2 years, or I was in Japan for 2 years. So he kind of talked through some of the things that I've always been taught catching, like rake the ball to your ear, get your feet going as fast as you can. And what I found was when I started to change or rethink about this sequence, my consistency in my throw took off. How well I was throwing the ball and how on the money I was completely changed. I was able to just consistency-wise be on the base every time, which is one of my absolutes in throwing. Like, I have to be able to throw the ball. I want all of my energy going through second base, and that's the biggest, most important part. Then I can work on speed and all that kind of stuff. So the sequence that I kind of rediscovered was to, number one, separate your hand. So ball comes in your mitt, separate the ball. I have the ball here in a glove. So number one, separate. So get the ball out of your mitt as fast as possible. 2, we talk about as your shoulders turn and creating torque in your midsection, that's when your hands start to break apart and separate a little more. And then the last one is your feet, or if you throw from your knees, your feet are the last thing to go. And what that does is it allows you to actually, when that front foot strikes the ground, or your front knee strikes the ground, your hand is in a spot ready to release the ball. And that's the second part. Like, if you actually get your hand out front, that's how we throw the ball well. A lot of times what I see is our first reaction is to turn our feet, and then our feet are, as soon as our front foot's down, our legs are gone, and we're just getting back up here to throw, and our arms completely late. So this sequence has fixed so many kind of throwing inconsistencies in my throw. I teach it to my girls. When I was at Virginia, we taught this, and a lot of them, just the consistency piece and how fast they're able to throw just completely took off. So again, it's separate first, shoulder turn or feel torque in your torso, and then let your feet go, or you go down to your knees to throw. Just ensures that you're going to be in a spot ready to deliver the ball when that front foot hits the ground.
And from your perspective, Ryan, does that pretty well cover the same, or is it a bit different on the men's side?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could throw like that. I threw out my arm one winter throwing snowballs, so I completely changed the way I throw the ball. I can't bring my arm back here anymore. So really, it's a quick transfer and I throw from this arm slot. I don't recommend it. Anyone that's learning how to catch, train your arm to go into different arm slots. Don't throw snowballs as hard as you can to throw out your arm. But really, yeah, what Kaleigh is talking about is the correct way. I like to throw from my knees now and really work on my transfer. I would say my arm is not too hard, but the quickness getting to the base has improved with practice. So I definitely wouldn't be able to move to the outfield to throw. I don't think I'd be able to reach second base from right field.
So Ryan, I'm going to share another story with you on that, which is funny because you said that. So when I was over in Japan, we would practice like 8 hours a day, 7 hours a day, every day, 29 days out of the month. So we get one Monday off so if you have bad throwing mechanics, like you can't hang. Like within 2 weeks, and I had pretty decent throwing mechanics, but I was always taught like turn the ball away, get back to here. And you can't last. And after about 2 or 3 weeks, I kind of noticed, like, why does everyone over here hold the ball right here? Like, everyone just picks up the ball and holds it right here. Infielders, whoever it is. So I'm like, let me try it. And no joke, the first day of practice I tried this, my elbow and my arm, my shoulder didn't hurt. And I was like, this is interesting. Why is this the case? So it's completely like, I completely do the same thing now, but more so from being over there. But if you just get to here and then your elbow goes and you almost just create a little like lever there, that's all you need to throw. And there's no strain in your elbow and shoulder. So that's I completely throw that exact same way. I would teach that because that's literally how they all throw. They just pick it up and put it to here. But in the end, there's just no elbow strain or shoulder strain in that throwing stroke.
Now, Kaleigh, so I think both of you have kind of mentioned throwing from the knees. Now, is that something that you decide as soon as a runner's on first, and you kind of have an idea of what their speed is, and you obviously know which pitch is coming. Do you adjust that on the fly for each pitch?
Yeah, I always kind of the pitch dictates. If it's a rise ball up and in that's taking me out of my crouch, I'm not going to go down and try to go through the ground. I think throwing from your knees is faster. But again, the pitch, if the pitch takes you up out of your crouch, you might as well just continue up and make your toss. So it's really pitch dependent. If I'm kind of looking at the pitcher, I almost think of like across the top and maybe like an up and in to give me a little more time, or middle in. I would throw for my feet. Everything else would be kind of throwing for my knees.
Yeah. And for you, Ryan, do you always throw from your knees, or is there a time that you could jump up kind of quicker?
Yeah, well, there's a guy in Argentina. I'd like to start running to the mound. That's the only way I can throw him out, I'd say. But if it's a drop ball, it's from the knees. Rise balls usually standing up. Change up. I'm not throwing it. I'm not going to get.
And are there situations where it's a rise ball, it might be high and outside, that you just know you don't have a chance, you just hold on to the ball?
Oh, definitely. If I don't get a good transfer, I'm not going to throw it. I mean, there's a good chance it's going to the outfield if the ball is not in a good grip in my hand. Now, a good trick, if there's a runner on first and he's looking at your signs, you can call a change up, but you and your pitcher know it's a lifter. That's a good way to get someone. Honestly, good trick to be on. Show your signs.
I might start using that.
You really build that bond with your pitcher, and you kind of talk things out with them and tell them this is what's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Good. Those are really great comments. I think we'll move on now to the next topic that we have for everybody. So Ryan's going to talk a bit more about pitch sequencing.
Yeah, so I mean, the key to getting any of the hitters out, and really we're talking about our threats and situations, is to screw up their timing and their pitch recognition. And a lot of times in games, it's going to be very instinctual on what pitch you select to throw. So you obviously, we go in with a plan, and we say we're gonna live on a drop ball 60% of the time, maybe rise ball and change up split. But if you see a different swing pattern, or you see something in your step, that is when you're gonna change your sequencing. What we like to do is, well, all the pitchers on the national team have great changeups, so we like to work the changeup in early. And when I say changeup, there's a straight changeup, and then there's just off-speed drop balls and off-speed rise balls. So if we see a guy that's dead on rise ball, our pitchers, a non-conventional, just throw it, I don't know, at 75% and get them out front. And we want our hitters that we face, we want them to say, God, I just missed it. That's what we want. You just missed that. They go in the bench with a bit of confidence, and then we know how we can attack them the next time. You do have to be cognizant that good hitters are going to try to set you up with a pitch, and just playing, in our level, playing club team ball, and then watching national team events, you'll see hitters that are trying to do that or sit on particular pitches. 0-2 changeups, I like them. We like them. We use them. It just screws everything up for the hitter. But yeah, it's really just it's very instinctual. With the 1 foot view. Sure, there's a 1,000-foot view of, okay, this is our plan against New Zealand. But then you get in, they're sitting dead red on a drop ball. My plan was to go all drop ball, so now we got to change on the spot. And it is very instinctual, and we have to react and adapt to each at bat and each swing, really.
So Ryan, you talked about changeups too, and how our pitchers tend to throw them a lot, and I think Kaleigh, you would agree that we probably throw more changeups than any other country in the world. How do you work that in, and are your pitchers comfortable throwing that in any count? Some of the other countries seem to wait to one moment and maybe use 1 or 2 in a game in a big moment, but we tend to use it a lot more. How does that work into your preparation for pitch sequencing?
Yeah, I mean, it's great if you got to use every now and then, if you just got pure gas and movement beyond beat. But if you're someone like Sean who throws at 75 to 78 miles an hour, he throws his changeup more often. His ball looks a lot quicker than what it is. All of our pitchers, we need that changeup early in the game, and be able to throw it at any count, really. That's the important thing. 3-2 changeup has to be, our pitchers need to be able to throw that pitch. No one really is expecting a 3-2 changeup, an 0-2 changeup. No one's expecting 7 changeups in a row, which we do from time to time. So really, it's working our changeup in early to make our harder stuff look even that much more pace on it.
Can you maybe talk a bit more about that from the women's perspective, Kaleigh?
Yeah, I think it's funny that you say that. I don't even wouldn't have put that together, but we do probably throw a lot more changeups than most other teams. But I mean, I think that goes to what Ryan said. We on the women's side too, we don't have someone who, like a Monica Abbott, who's going to blow for us 72 to 74 and just try to overpower people. So when you don't have that, like you have to be able to change speeds, and we like to work everything off our changeups. Obviously, I think we have three or four of the best changeups in the game, and so why not work everything off your changeup? So we'll have games where we say, like, we're going to go changeup heavy, and we're going to throw that early and often, and try to get them looking for the change and respecting the change. And now all of a sudden that 66 to 68 mile an hour rise ball looks like 74 because you've just been slowed down so much over the course of the game. Or sometimes we'll say, you know what, like, let's try to get in and use our 68 to get them looking hard. And now all of a sudden that changeup is even more devastating. And that's what we're going to use later in the games to get out. So we do kind of bounce around in the games, whether our plan is to use it or to kind of hold back on it. But again, like, we have such devastating changeups, it's silly not to use them because it's the easiest way to disrupt timing is a change of speeds. You can do it with location, but it's so much harder. Like, you have to be pinpoint and you have to be like really exact with what you're doing. The changeup, even if you miss the location of the changeup, the change of speeds is messing up the timing of the hitter. So they're just so valuable in what you can do as a catcher and how fast you can get somewhere and how quickly you can get out of at bats. Because our goal is, like, if we can get out of an at bat in 4 pitches, let's do it. If we can get out in 1 pitch, let's do it. Keep that pitch good. We don't care about strikeouts. Let's just get out. If we can get through 7 innings and have 80 pitches, awesome. Like, that's a great game for us. So, and I think that's just the easiest way to do what we've been talking about in terms of disrupting the timing.
Yeah. So on that topic, Ryan, like on pitch sequencing, how much work do you put in before the game to kind of know how you're going to attack hitters? And does that change as the game goes based on your feeling of it?
It definitely does change as the game progresses, just because we don't want players and hitters to pick up our tendencies. Preparation is just a year-round responsibility, really. You know, our main goal is to win championships. To do that, you got to be best prepared. So it's watching video, it's watching at bats, it's going to the field, taking tallies. You know, we got scouting reports on every hitter that we think is going to burn us, and every hitter that really plays at that level. You know, I pay more attention to the players in the meat of the lineups, just because it's kind of impossible to have a book on everyone, just yourself. There's a core group of players on the national team that work together and share some knowledge. But preparation, you know, for the next event is huge, and I can't even put a tally on the counters, you know, of the hours that we put in. It just don't stop. Anytime you just want to watch a game, you're always thinking, what did they throw here? How do we get this person out? When we're playing league, you know, I'm sure Sean looks at players not as Ryan Boland. He's looking at a Jerome Ramacki. He's looking at, how do I get these people out? You know, so it's always one step ahead. We're always preparing in that way to win championships.
And Kaleigh, for you, so before a game, do you go through the opposing lineup and kind of formulate a plan and then try to carry that out? And, you know, is it during the game it changes a little bit when you're on the bench and that, and even at the moment? But can you talk about the preparation you put into that?
Yeah, for sure. I think we go through every hitter, and I'll go through and look at and chart what they've done and what they like to do. Is there a hole in their swing that we're looking to try to exploit? Knowing what pitchers we have going in what order, because Danielle Laurie is going to be way different from Jenna Kyra. So how do we want to attack it with the pitchers that we know we're going to have going? What do we want to do first time through the order? What are we trying to get to third time through, so we still have something to go to? But it's very much the same. We're trying to expose weaknesses. A lot of times, I mean, at our level, like there aren't many weaknesses in hitters, so we're trying to play to our pitchers' strengths as best we possibly can. But if you look towards, like, looking forward to an Olympics, we got 5 games. The value of each pitch in those games is pretty significant. You can't afford to make a mistake and throw a wrong pitch. A home run in a big situation, it could be that could be the difference of playing for a medal or not. So when you get into these tournaments where you get to the medal round and you got 1 or 2 games, it's so important to have something to go to and know exactly what you want to go to. And then when you get in the game, like Ryan said, it might change. Like, you might see someone comes up to the plate and they're a foot off the box, or they're way in the back of the box and they've never done that before. Well, what are they looking for? And maybe I'm going to not do what I thought I was going to do because they're trying to cheat something. So you have to know that, though, and you have to put in the preparation, to then be able to adjust instead of just going out and winging it. It's not the chances of success. You might, but we don't like leaving things up to chance like that.
Yeah. That's a good point. I mean, we've seen on the international level, you almost have to be ready from the get-go too, because, you know, sometimes the first pitch is out of the park and you're already behind. We've seen that so many times on both the men's side and the women's side. I mean, you have to have a game plan and, you know who that first hitter is and try to get by them first before your pitcher starts rolling. You know, you can't just lay in, you know, a soft pitch to begin with and they jump all over it. So, good. So yeah, we'll move on now to Kaleigh is going to take us through mental performance now. So if anybody in the audience wants to ask some questions, just make sure you put them in the questions box. We'll have plenty of time to go through those after we've went through mental performance here. So go ahead, Kaleigh, what do you have for us on that?
Yeah, so this came up a ton. I've been doing some calls with some younger teams, and this seemed to be a common theme. So I wanted to touch on it first. And I think a lot of times we talk about, like, how do we deal with the frustration of a bad result, or what does that look like? If you get frustrated, how do you deal with being in a slump? And I get that question asked a ton. So I think one of the big things that I found helpful is to start separating emotion and results. And I'm not saying that you can't play with emotion. I'm just saying that there shouldn't be an emotion tied to a result. Example, like, I just grounded out, I'm over 10, like, I'm mad at myself. So one thing we can do on the flip side of that, when we talk about, people say it, like, how do you play one pitch at a time, or to be in the process? Like, it's all about the process, or process, I guess, since it's a Softball Canada webinar. So what does that mean? What does it mean to be in the process? So to me, it's two questions you ask yourself. If you're a pitcher, or catcher, infielder, whatever, like, did I swing at the right pitch, or did I call the right pitch? Because if I didn't swing at a good pitch, if I swung at a pitch over my head, there's your answer, like, swing at a better pitch. Or if I didn't call the right pitch, or I didn't execute the right pitch, there's your answer, execute a better pitch. And then if maybe I did do that, like, what adjustments do I have to make for the next at bat to be better, the next pitch, the next time this batter hits? So if we take, there's no emotion to that. It's not, I'm a terrible person because I just got out and I let my team down. It's, did I do what I wanted to do? And if I didn't, like, what adjustments can I make? So after the game, we can ask ourselves, or after the season, like, are certain things starting to repeat itself? Maybe I kept rolling over the drop ball. I rolled over the drop ball. Well, next time I practice, like, let me work on getting underneath the drop ball, or how do I not roll over the drop ball as much? Because if we can take kind of a learning approach and just trying to incrementally pick away at the things that are happening, it makes the game a lot more manageable than, oh my God, I'm not a horrible human because I went 0 for 20. It's just the reality of where I'm at in this moment. So I think that's the biggest thing for me, is you shouldn't feel bad about an 0 for 20 slump if you're continuously trying to work away at what's happening. And that's how you're going to continuously get better. And it's not going to be such a frustration for you playing the game, because it should be fun. And I think if you're continuing to approach it with that learning mentality, you're always in control. As soon as it's tied to results, like, you don't have control over what happens after you swing the bat. Like, you could hit a seed right at the shortstop and be out, but is that a bad at bat? No, like, that's awesome. I did what I wanted to do. So trying to separate. I know we get caught up in batting average and on base percentage and all this stuff, but it's really about your development as a person and how you're getting better day after day. So that would be my kind of big takeaway from the mental performance piece.
Nice. So Ryan, can you maybe talk about a few strategies that you use to kind of stay on top of your game? And I know you're a really intense player when you're, on the field of play. I mean, you're always talking. You're talking to your pitcher, you're talking to your coaches, and what do you do to kind of stay focused and bounce back from mistakes like that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's frustrating getting out. What's most frustrating is if you think you were cheated on an out, on maybe a bad call. And I think, it just comes with experience and age. I mean, I was fight or flight when I was in my 20s. If I got out, helmets would fly and bats would beat off the bench, and really just taking myself out of the game from a catching aspect. What you have to realize when you're a catcher, your main responsibility is navigating through that game. So understand that, yeah, your hitting is important. There's absolutely no doubt about it. But you got to take care of that pitcher. You got to be the eyes and ears for the coach. You got to take care of the umpire. Widen that plate as much as you can. It comes with age or with maturity. When I was in my 20s, all I wanted to do was hit. And I didn't understand the responsibility of catching as I do now, and the importance of it, and how we get to winning championships, and how a catcher can help you do that defensively. And that's really what the main job of a catcher is navigating through storms. And every competition, that we go to, nationals, provincials, league, Pan Ams, Olympics, they are big storms, no matter in your own right. At different levels, they're huge for you. And you need to take care of that pitcher, take care of the umpire, and let the coach know that you're a good communicator and that you're not upset because you're at bat and giving false information or false feedback to the coach.
Now, this question is for both of you. So on the mental performance side, when did you realize that it wasn't so much about you anymore, it's more about the team and, sacrificing some parts of your game to make the team better? We'll start with you on that, Kaleigh.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd say like the big one for me was I think going over to Japan really changed my perspective, just because it was so much about you're putting in all this time to prepare, and it's about putting the best product on the field to kind of grow the game. So that really changed my impact. Like, why do I care so much about like what my actual results are? Like, it's about putting a great product on the field and making sure the people around me are in a position to execute at their best. And I think that's probably where I feel like I've always been pretty team focused, but that's where it really flipped the switch for me, in the sense that like I shouldn't care about my performance in like numbers wise. Like, I care that I'm performing and I'm getting these pitchers through the games, and I'm giving them the platform to do what they want to do as best as they can, and that's way more fulfilling to me than me going out there and going 3 for 3 and us losing a game. Like, it doesn't matter. So that's where I kind of, that flip for me, just I think being over there and being in that experience, like, why are you doing this for 8 hours a day? It can't just because you want to go for 4 for 4. It's about winning ball games, and it's about giving the people around you a better platform to do what they can do. And I think it changed the way I looked at the game, for me, in a big sense.
And let's switch over to you, Ryan, on that. So, obviously at the Canadian Championship level, you guys are on an unbelievable streak. Was it near the beginning of that streak where people all kind of bought into the team concept?
Yeah, I mean, on a personal level, in 2010, it was a goal of mine to always play on Team Canada. So in 2010, Sean and I played on Newfoundland too. And I said, I just need to hit. I just need to hit. I just need to hit. I went out and I had a good tournament. Was put on the 40-man squad. And then it was just, I just need to hit. I need to hit. I need to make the team. I need to go to an ISF. We went to New Zealand in 2013, and we didn't meet our expectation. And I reflected on that. I wasn't prepared for the hitters. We weren't prepared mentally for the hitters that we had to face. So then, as the next year happened, you got feedback from your coaches. They assured you, have a good season. You're going to be on the team, but we need you to get our pitchers prepared. And that's when the real responsibility shifted from individual performance to how do we get outs, and how does Sean and Paul Court, Devin McCullough, Justin Schofield, Scott Life, Paddy Burns, how do these guys get on the platform that they need to be? And that became my responsibility. And it wasn't hit a home run against Chile or Israel or whatever. It's have good at bats, but take care of the defense. And that's really where is since 2010 when I made the team, and then had a bad experience from a results standpoint at the ISF, and then just feedback loops with the coaches and understanding their expectations.
Good. So thank you very much for your thoughts on all that. So that kind of wraps up the topics that we wanted to cover with you guys. Now we'll open it up for questions from the public. So if you do have questions, please put them in that question box. I'm going to go through them and ask as many as we can over the next 15 minutes or so. So I'm just going to scroll through here and see what we haven't hit yet already. Here's a good question. I'll start with you, Ryan. How do you feel about coaches calling pitches?
Personally, it don't happen. coaches don't call pitches on the teams that I play with, and that's all I can say about that.
How about you, Kaleigh? Like, is it different when you're at the younger levels that, you know, maybe the catchers don't have all the knowledge that they need to call games, or what's your feeling around coaches calling pitches?
Yeah, so to me, there's one time and one place for a coach to call a pitch, and that would be in college softball. And the reason for that being is I do think there's a certain level of preparedness that catchers need to have. Like Ryan and I talked about how much goes into that. I don't think you can expect that from a college player who's trying to navigate that and go to school for full time and do all that. And the second part of that, like, that's the only situation where you have like coaches and families' livelihoods that are on the line. Like, throwing a bad pitch, not making postseason could affect 3 families and 3 coaches in the sense of, so that's a little bit bigger of a situation. There's none of those situations I've ever seen in travel ball or 60, whatever it is. I've never seen that in any other situation. So if that's the case, let the kids call the game. Even if they're making mistakes, like, teach them how and why you wouldn't do that. Like, have the conversation after the inning. What do we throw there? What were you thinking? Oh, here's maybe another thing to think about in that situation. What we should be doing as coaches in the younger levels is teaching them how and why we're doing things, not throwing it down. Because honestly, if you're just throwing numbers down to a catcher, like, they're essentially a backstop. Like, think of them as a screen back there. You might as well put a catch net and just like have them throw the ball. Like, all they're doing is catching the ball and throwing it back. There's no thought process to that. We're not giving them that opportunity to learn.
Yeah. So coaches listening out there, you know, teach your athletes how, or your catchers, what should be thrown in which situation, and, you know, kind of, you know, take your players through that so you don't have to call it for them. So this question will go to Ryan. So as a catcher, do you pay attention to foot positioning of the batter when they step in? And does that change how you kind of attack that batter if you don't have, you know, scouting on them?
Yeah, for sure. More, I guess, their stride versus foot positioning, because I face people with pretty wonky foot positioning that can have great plate coverage. So really, it's their stride, and their how aggressive they are with their swinging, and that's when we'll really let our instincts take over and change up our pitch sequencing if we don't have a scouting report.
Yeah. And how about you, Kaleigh? Do you typically look at how they're positioning themselves in the box, and, you know, maybe change even after you've seen one swing? Maybe you change your approach a little bit.
Yeah, I think swings are like the swing itself tells you a lot more about what they're doing. The only thing maybe pre-pitch I would look for is a change in where they're standing, because I think most hitters, if they're doing the same thing over again, they're going to be in the same part of the box. So maybe they come up the first time they're in the back of the box, and the second time they're in the front. Something has changed in their approach. So that would kind of send off a red flag. Maybe they're off the plate or on the plate. So a change in what they're doing from their normal would be a little bit of something to take a look at. But I think it's more their swing path and how their swing actually looks once they're executing it.
Okay, so I'll start with Kaleigh on this one. So how do you see the relationship with other players? Obviously, the relationship with the pitcher is a natural one for catchers. How do you kind of, you know, deal with talking to other players and coaches, you know, during obviously field positioning and defensive positioning and all that? You know, how do you see that relationship for you?
Yeah, so I think the catcher's the quarterback. Like, they are the one that is responsible. The quarterback knows what the offensive line has to do, what every position has to do, where they're supposed to be, what they're supposed to be doing. So I have a ton of communication with the middle infielders, even the outfield. You should get a feel for a catcher, like where you're kind of seeing swings and what's happening. So a lot of times we have signals with our outfielders. Are they moving in? Are we shifting over? Maybe we want to pinch middle on a second baseman, because just what I'm seeing, I know this hitter based on all the information of what I've seen in scouting. She's probably going to roll over this ball up the middle on the next pitch I'm going to throw. So I think it's super important to understand, like, what everyone's trying to do. What are they working on? What can they handle? And how can I help give them as much information as possible so we're getting outs? Because there's nothing worse as a catcher than knowing, kind of getting a feel for where they're going to hit, not saying anything, and then we're out of position and we give up a hit. Like, that's just so avoidable just by communicating a little bit more. So having those, being able to do that with all your players is so important.
Anything to add to that, Ryan?
No, just, you know, you're, as Kaleigh said, the master communicator there, letting your infielders know where they have to set up. But most importantly, well, in my perspective anyway, is the feedback with the coach and having that relationship and making sure that he or she really trusts what you're saying. And you have to have the confidence to be honest with your coach about your pitcher. And that's really the main thing there for that communication line.
So we talked a bit about this in positioning, but we'll get into more of it now in terms of blocking. So what are your strategies with blocking pitches? I'll start with you on that, Ryan.
If it hits me and goes in front of the plate, it is a bonus. I try to pick everything. Maybe a change up where I can get down and properly block it. And I was a goalie. Believe it or not, and I find it incredibly hard to properly block the drop ball that the guys throw. Change-ups, we can get down and leave it in front of the plate, but I will be open to anyone to show me how to block a drop ball from Justin Schofield or Patrick Burns or Sean Cleary or Scott Life, because I'll pay for you to come to Newfoundland and show me how to do it.
Now,
to me, I don't do it. I try to pick everything.
Yeah. So when you talk about picking, so do you do any like drills just for quick hands and kind of try to, you know, mitigate that way in terms of reaction time and working on reaction time at home?
Not really drills. It's just repetition with practice with the guys, really. You know, you really need to pick up their spins at different spots. Like if I had a place to train in Newfoundland, we could probably get a machine to throw in the dirt and pick it. But even still, there's nuances to the guy's spin that will spin a certain way when it hits the dirt. So it doesn't really have too much girth, I guess, when it comes off a machine versus when Sean or Justin Schofield are throwing and the ball hits the dirt and just tails away.
Yeah. Kaleigh, any tips for Ryan?
Yes.
I mean, I get it. He's in a different world. I mean, when guys are throwing 80 miles an hour from, like, it's just like you said, the reaction time is just not, it's self-defense and just get whatever you can in front of the ball. I think in the women's game, it's probably, we have a little bit more time to react just because the speed isn't the same. So one of the biggest things that we talk about is just, a lot of people have kind of the kickback block or the mule kick where they say like replace your knees with your feet. We just try to like explode forward and press down as fast as we can down to the ground. I think if you think if this is my head, let's see if I can, my head and my spine angle here, we just want to keep that spine angle to the ground. So if you think about, if you were to throw your legs back, the first thing your head's going to do, this is awkward in the video, is go forward. And we don't want that. So control your head, just push down through the ground as fast as you can and try to square up the center of your chest protector through the ball. But avoid the kick back, just because I think what's going to happen, your head's going to go forward and you're just in a really compromising position to do anything after that.
So next question here, I'll start with Kaleigh this time. What's your favorite catching drill?
So there's one that we have that's called, we call it the Be an Athlete drill. You can actually check out my Twitter. This is a shameless plug for my Twitter. If you go, I think it's Kaleigh Rafter 5. So it's a little tough to explain. Essentially, you have a machine. It's throwing a ball it's bouncing a ball to the same spot. What we'll have the catchers do, the first ball they block, then they transition back about 5 steps. The next ball gets shot in the machine. It's a play at the plate. They come up, they make a backhand pick, they go back, they make a receive, and then they come up and make a forehand pick. So a lot of movement, a lot of parts happening, but that's probably my best exposure of just how people are moving and athleticism as a catcher. Any
favorites for you, Ryan, across any domain of catching any capacity, I guess?
We like to do situational drills. So basically a ball to the screen, scramble back and throw to first base, a bunt down the line, those drills, pop up from your squat and then throw over a runner, throw from the knees to third base, throw from the knees to first, just situational drills. I don't have anything whiz bang like Kaleigh got.
A lot of time coaching down there. You got to find fun things to do when you have to coach and you have 30 minutes a day to work with catchers. You kind of you figure out a lot of stuff to do.
Yeah.
Okay, so another question here. How do you manage your relationship with the pitcher during the game? So when you're going out for a mound visit and maybe you disagree on something, how do you go about going through that conversation? I'll start with you on that, Kaleigh.
Yeah, I think it's knowing your pitcher. I think for me, at the end of the day, like, they're the ones in the circle throwing the pitch. If they give up a hit at the end of the day and it loses a game, no one's going to say the catcher is the one that called that. Like, it's on the pitcher. They're taking that responsibility. So if they really feel strongly about something and they want to approach it a different way, like, that's their prerogative. We're not the ones that are going to take the heat after the game. If something happens and they end up losing the game, it's on them. So I think respecting that part of it, and also just knowing your pitcher. Like, there's certain people that I know I can go out and challenge just because their personality, like, they're very competitive and they want that. There's other people who want maybe a little bit more like, hey, like, you're doing good. Like, this is the plan. Like, give them reassurance into what we're doing and how we're going to attack the next hitter. So being very sensitive to what that is and what each pitcher needs, but at the same time, like, sometimes you may need to kind of light a little fire under their butt and make things happen. But I think it's never, there's not one way to do things. So there's not one. I'm not right all the time. Like, it is a back and forth. And if they're really bought into something, go for it and let them wear that burden, because they're going to be wearing the burden after the game anyways.
Does that differ for you, Ryan?
No, not really. You got to make sure your pitchers are comfortable in the location and the pitch. If they do miss a spot, there's absolutely nothing wrong with a heater back at their knee to let them know that you're upset with their missed spot. But certainly mound visits, it's a two-way street with our team. I'm seeing one thing and he's seeing the reciprocal. I'm seeing a step one way and he's seeing the exact opposite, being on two perspectives. We do definitely disagree at times, but at the end of the day, it's better that he's comfortable throwing a pitch than not being comfortable throwing the pitch that you want to call. So it really is a two-way street, pitching and catching.
So we'll move over to managing the umpires. We haven't really talked much about that. Do you want to start on that, Ryan? If is it important to you to build that relationship with an umpire to get a call later in the game or something like that? How do you see that?
Oh, definitely. I mean, these guys and girls, they're human. They want to have the best game possible. So start that relationship early. When the warm-up pitches, the first 5, get to know their names, what zone they like, where they're going to set up. Some things, and if I don't have an umpire, if it's my first time with an umpire, I'll let them know some of the tendencies of the pitcher. I'll tell them I'll tip him on a changeup just to let him know it's coming. I'll ask where he wants to set up, how far outside or inside does he want me moving, does he mind me moving late, and just stuff like that. Just build a rapport with the umpire, and then hopefully, it usually do work in your favor. They want to have a good.
How about you, Kaleigh?
Yeah, I think one of the tough parts I find, especially for us, a lot of our games are international tournaments. So a lot of times we get umpires who don't speak English, especially in the major games. So I think the biggest thing for me is let them establish their zone. Like, their zones sometimes change, and let them, over the first 2-3 innings, establish what they want to call, and then we have to throw to that. If I go in for the first inning and I'm trying to receive stuff and kind of call into question what they're calling right from the get-go, like, I've just eliminated any sort of rapport or chance for rapport I have with that umpire. So let them settle in, I think, in the first 3 to 4 innings, and then we start, okay, are you being consistent with what you told me in the first 2-3 innings that you're going to call? So that's where my time is. Okay, now how do I expand the zone based on what they're doing? How do I throw to what they've told me that they're going to call? And then in the later innings, if we have some discrepancies, that's when I say, hey, like you've established that this was a strike today. Let's make sure that's a strike today. And I think for me, that's always been the best way to go about it, not trying to go out there and this is what zone I want because this is what zone is right or whatever that may be, or I know this zone is going to help my pitcher more, so let me go try to fight for that from the first pitch. Let them work in, and then you can kind of adjust as the game goes on.
All right, so we'll finish on this question, and it'll be for Kaleigh because it's particular to slapping, and I know that's not really done too much in men's. I mean, there's a couple of those Argentina guys who are into it, but not really outside. So for Kaleigh, defense of the slap, what's your role in that?
Yeah, so I think for us, the slappers, we try to feed the defense. So if the slapper is just trying to tap it to the left-hand side, let's set our defense there. We'll throw you outside pitches all day. You can tap it to our shortstop or third baseman, and we'll play that game that you're not going to beat it out. If the ones that worry me are the ones that can stand in and hit and actually power slap, so they're trying to run through and hit a ball to the right center field gap. Those are the hitters that we'll have to like pay a little bit more attention to. It is starting to phase out, I'd say, a little bit in the women's game as well, because the defenses are so good and the pitchers are so good now that, I mean, I'll take my defense 19 times out of 20 on tapping a ball left side. Like, it's just, our arms are going to be better, our positioning will be better. So, and if not, like, so we either feed them away or try to hammer them down and in. A lot of slappers don't like the down and in, just because it's a really tough pitch to get to when you're running through the box. If you think about having to like drop barrel, it's just really difficult. So if they're going to just tap at the left side, go away. If they're going to show you that they can go to a lot of different directions, we'll try to feed them down and in a little bit more.
So how happy are you that Larissa Franklin and Joey Laya on your team?
Yeah, Joey's the tough. Joey can drag bunt too, and the hitter can drag because then you're always worried about going inside, and then they can just drag it down the first baseline where no one is. And the triple threats definitely have a place still in the game, but Ryan, does the Japanese team, did they have a few slappers? I thought, yeah.
Yeah, Japan and Argentina, they can do it well. We'll just try to live on the inside. Of course, the coaching staff makes sure that a pitcher that can field the ball, throw the ball overhand is on the mound versus those guys. Because, you know, high probability it goes up the middle and the pitcher is going to have to field the ball. But we'll usually bring our second baseman in and leave our first baseman at the base and attack it that way when we got a good pitcher that can field the ball. So try to get something to second base-ish. So that way we don't have the first baseman racing back to the bag.
I think the strategy on the men's game on the slap is more chopping the ball over the second baseman. I've seen that more on the men's side than I have on the girls' side. You know, on the girls' side, it's more about putting it over the third baseman or through the third baseman, and on the men's side, it seems to be more attacking that second baseman. Do you guys agree on that?
We'll live on the inside or on the white part of the batter's box on these slappers and hopefully jam them up, get their bat in. Not hit at the third. I mean, hit at the third or shortstop in the hole with the speed these guys got. The slappers I'm talking about, they're going to be safe. Mm-hmm. We try to get them to hit at second base, really.
Good. Okay, so any parting comments that you would like to give? I'll start with you, Ryan. If there's anything you want to say, before we leave.
No, well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's certainly an honor to talk in this kind of a forum. Any catchers out there that want anything additional, like go through Gilles or Mike Brancho, reach out. I'm certainly willing to help anyone I can. And just really think about catching as an art form and making that plate as big as you can. And, be a master communicator and keep your emotions in check. And hopefully I get to play against some of you young people at some time. So thanks.
Great. Thanks for stopping by with us today, Ryan. How about you, Kaleigh?
Yeah, just echo what Ryan said. For like, completely appreciate this opportunity to talk catching, and hopefully, like, my big passion is just to grow, continue to grow the game in Canada, and make sure that our national programs for years to come are in a good place, and we're continuing to be on the forefront of the softball conversation. So like Ryan said, find me on Twitter, find me on Instagram. If you can't find me, shoot an email to Gilles. He'll hook you up. But yeah, any way I can help, drills, whatever that may be. I've had, I think, 1 or 2 people just send me, like, what do you think of this? Like, give me some pointers. Totally cool doing that. So open book when it comes to that. Just reach out and ask. But again, thanks for Softball Canada, and just thanks to Ryan. It was cool to hear the other side. I know I've had a few tournaments together, but never, the men's and women's team are usually never in the same place at the same time. So this took us COVID to finally get a chance to sit down and talk about catching.
Yeah. Maybe you should, if you're listening, Mike, maybe you should change that. Send us down to Florida, maybe.
I'm here, ready to roll. We got spots here.
Yeah. Great. So thank you very much to both of you for joining us, and we certainly look forward to following your careers as you go forward. You know, Kaleigh, good luck preparing for the Olympics next year. Ryan, I'm sure you'll be quite interested in, you know, the next run for the men's at the World Championships there. So thank you, both of you, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
So that will conclude today's webinar. Thank you very much for joining us today and for submitting your questions. If you have any comments or suggestions for our speaker series webinars, feel free to send them to Gilles Leblanc or Angela Ballantyne at Softball Canada. Stay tuned for details about our next speaker series webinar presented by Rawlings Canada at softball.ca in the next couple of days. Cela conclut notre webinaire d'aujourd'hui. Merci beaucoup d'avoir participé et d'avoir envoyé vos questions. Si vous avez des commentaires ou des suggestions pour ces webinaires, veuillez les envoyer à Gilles Leblanc ou Angela Ballantyne à Softball Canada. Assurez-vous de vérifier softball.ca dans les prochains jours pour les détails sur le prochain webinaire présenté par Rawlings Canada.